Hey everybody, Dr. Diane here, Libido Doc. In this video, we're talking about pelvic pain. This month is pelvic pain month. So I encourage you to subscribe to this channel because if you want to really encourage a healthy pelvis, if you want to get out of pain, or if you want to just make sure that as you age, you retain pelvic floor function, preventing incontinence, preventing any sort of other problems like low back pain, making sure you can still have great and wonderful and meaningful sex as you age, presenting atrophy of all the muscles of the vagina and pelvic floor and more, you're going to want to tune into this month. The purpose of this video is to talk about the root causes of pelvic floor pain. And so many times I find that we are just not being very thorough with fully identifying the root causes. And most of the time, I find that there's more than one root cause that is actually leading to the pelvic pain. So what will happen so many times is people will try one therapy, and that therapy will only get them so far because it's really only part of the problem. And so various things that we need to think about, and I'll be covering these in more detail over the month, but to give you a big picture of all the different things that we really want to consider when we're getting to the root cause of healthy pelvic floor function, of preventing or recovering from pelvic pain, we want to consider, I'm going to start with some of the basics, and then we'll go kind of off from there. So some of the basics are going to be things like hormone levels, right? So making sure you have really healthy sex hormones such as estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. DHEA in particular, I find to be so related to healthy pelvic floor functioning and preventing pain and preventing atrophy. So hormones are definitely a huge thing. Blood flow. And we talk about blood flow a lot with sex with men, but we don't talk about blood flow a lot with women and their pelvic floor. And blood flow is really necessary to keep that pelvic floor functioning well. Another thing that happens, and this happens oftentimes because of trauma, because of pregnancy, because of aging, is changes in the musculature of the pelvic floor. So the pelvic floor is that whole basin of muscles, right, that really surrounds that lower part of our abdomen. And so these muscles, oftentimes, especially when we're talking about the interior part of these muscles in the pelvic floor, we don't exercise them a lot, right? So a lot of times people are taught to do Kegels. They're not even doing them correctly. And we're going to talk about that in later videos. But one of the biggest problems is the muscles of the pelvic floor are not working correctly. They're too tight. They're too loose. They lose their ability to stretch and relax in the way they need to, or some of them are over tight and the others aren't working correctly. So we have a muscular imbalance that can be corrected. We also have other types of scenarios such as radiating pain. So sometimes pelvic floor dysfunction actually is coming from the intestinal tract. So making sure there is not bacteria, viruses, parasites, other types of problems that are creating inflammation in the intestinal tract and radiating to the pelvic floor. Chronic UTIs are often involved. There's another condition called interstitial cystitis, which is basically like leaky gut of the bladder. It's when the bladder wall gets really irritated, feels like you have to pee frequently and you think you have a UTI, but there's not that burning going on. So that's oftentimes a condition called interstitial cystitis that can lead to pelvic floor dysfunction and pain. And we cannot forget about emotions and trauma. And yes, this can be any sort of sexual trauma, but even emotions and stress we hold in our pelvic floor. In medicine, one of the things we talk about is as above, so below. So meaning the top part of our spine, which is basically the bottom of our skull and our TMJ, essentially if we have imbalances here, they often we have correlating imbalances in the bottom of our spine, the pelvic bowl. So essentially, many people that are experiencing jaw tightness and clench their jaw due to stress can also find that subsequent stress is actually stored in their pelvic floor muscles. Sometimes if we do things as women, sometimes if we are engaged in sex, even with a loving partner, sometimes when we're feeling like maybe emotionally unsafe, but we go for it anyways, and maybe our heart's a little guarded and we go for it anyways, sometimes those muscles can actually hold on and they can tighten around the intensity of that sexual experience. And we can hold that. Sometimes that can lead to numbness. Sometimes that can lead to the pain. So these are some of the top main reasons why there is pelvic floor dysfunction. That can be pain, can be numbness, can be just purely not enjoying sex, pain with sex. These are the things we're going to be talking about in this YouTube channel this month, as well as in my pelvic floor and pelvic pain masterclass. So make sure you sign up for that. Make sure you subscribe to the channels. We're going to be dissecting these in more detail over this coming month, as I've had a lot of people in the community tell me that this is something they want help and support in, and I'm happy to help and support you guys. So always keep me posted on with comments on how I can continue to make content that you want and that will serve you. That is what I am here for. Again, I'm your libido doc, Dr. Diane. I'll see you in another video.